Public Bridge Authority, and I'll be your host for today's proceedings. So this year, the bridge turns 96 years old. For almost a century, it has been one of the most important border crossings between Canada and the United States. Not only does it link Buffalo and Western New York with Fort Erie and Southern Ontario, it is a critical supply chain link facilitating $50 billion in trade between two great countries. Given its historical context and the change in travel and trade over these many decades, it is not surprising that there are unique geographic constraints that dictate how the bridge and plazas function. The Peace Bridge Authority is fortunate in that it is a single binational entity governed by a binational board that owns and controls both plazas and has Customs and Border Protection and Canada Border Services Agency as tenants. This means that we're able to move functions to either side of the bridge where it makes sense and to compensate for a very constrained U.S. plaza. Just for perspective, the Peace Bridge's U.S. plaza is 14 acres. The new U.S. plaza at the Gordie Howe Bridge in Windsor is 167 acres. This means we have been forced to be innovative. The saying that necessity is the mother of invention certainly applies to the Peace Bridge. Over the past 25 years, there have been a number of initiatives with both CBSA and CBP. From the Commercial Vehicle Processing Center in the late 1990s, where Peace Bridge employees affixed barcodes to paper manifests to make sure trucks were prepared to enter the U.S., to post-9/11 reconfiguration of the Canadian Plaza and relocating tolls and offices from the U.S. to Canada to add more Customs and Border Protection booth capacity on the U.S. side, being the first border crossing to utilize electronic transponder tolling, pioneering high-low booths to allow Customs and Border Protection to switch back and forth between cars and trucks using the same inspection lanes, and in 2012 facilitating a one-year commercial pre-clearance pilot with both governments where CBP officers cleared commercial vehicles in Canada, to implementing pre-arrival readiness evaluation on our Canadian plaza with Customs and Border Protection, and during the 4-year-long Peace Bridge rehabilitation to ensure all trucks had filed their e-manifests and paid the border crossing fee prior to getting onto the Peace Bridge. The project being announced today is a progression and, in fact, is a culmination of a number of these initiatives responding to legislative requirements and leveraging state-of-the-art border technology. With that, I'm very pleased to be here with the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Transport and Member of Parliament for Niagara Centre, Vance Badawey, for this important announcement today. Please join me in welcoming him to speak.
Up to me, yeah, thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. It's great to see everybody here, and a pleasure to be here myself. It's nice to be back from Ottawa. I do want to recognize Tony Baldinelli, the MP for Niagara Falls, Niagara Lake, and Fort Erie. Tony, it's great to see you, and not necessarily across the aisle, but here at home. And it's nice to be home, isn't it? But it is a pleasure, once again, folks. Bonjour à tous, and again, to all of you, welcome. Thank you, Ron, for that warm introduction. It's great to be here once again on the lands of the Peace Bridge here on the Canadian side. And on behalf of my colleague and friend, the Minister of Transport, Pablo Rodriguez, who wishes he could be here, but he's in another part of the country. Again, it's with full acknowledgement that we see all of you, all the partners, and of course appreciate all that you do with respect to bringing trade across the border, going both ways. I also want to wish to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee, and to acknowledge the neighboring communities of the Six Nations of the Grand River and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. It's important for me to recognize the long history of our Indigenous peoples, the First Nations and Métis peoples in Ontario and throughout the country, and to continue, quite frankly, on behalf of all of us and you individually, to show our respect to them today and well into the future. I'm happy to join you today at the heart of one of North America's busiest economic corridors. As somebody from the city of Port Colborne, mayor for the past 14 years in Port Colborne, or I should say mayor for 14 years in the city, and the past 9 as an MP, I fully recognize the values of what the Peace Bridge offers, once again, not only here in Canada, but also on the American side, and the partners that we have to, again, move trade with a lot of fluidity going both ways. I'm very aware of how valuable our proximity to our neighbors in the U.S. is for trade, for travel, and quite frankly, being born and raised in this area, it's not just trade and travel that crosses over the border, but many times it's going to see family, going to see friends. Quite frankly, it's become one seamless movement of people and trade. And with that, it's become one community. We're over there all the time, whether it's at a Sabres game, whether it's at a Bills game, whether it's just seeing family and friends that we've known for years. It's become one bigger community, which I'll touch on in a second. The Peace Bridge, ladies and gentlemen, handles 5 million cars and more than 1 million truck crossings annually. It supports close to $40 billion in cross-border commercial activity each and every year. So it's vital. It's extremely vital to Canada and the U.S. that we work together, but equally as important, vital to Canada-U.S. trade, and is just one of many corridors that upholds Canada's supply chain day in and day out. Building up the strength and the resilience of Canada's supply chain is a top priority for the Minister, as well as myself, and all members of Parliament. Regardless of what party we belong to, we all work toward and row in the same direction, especially here in Niagara. And again, I want to acknowledge Tony, because although Tony and I may sit on opposite sides of the aisle, we do work very close together, and we do good work together. And Tony, I appreciate that. Thank you for that. We know that when our supply chains are working well, they help make life easier and more affordable for all of us, for Canadians, regardless of what parts of Canada and the U.S. we're from. Quite simply, well-functioning supply chains support the economy and the well-being of every household. And that means supporting local economies, as well as helping Canadian businesses get to international markets. That's why the Government of Canada is making investments through the $4.6 billion National Trade Corridors Fund. It aims to support the flow of goods across Canada's supply chains by alleviating bottlenecks and strengthening fluidity in strategic trade corridors such as this one. And that's why I'm here today. I'm pleased to announce more than $12 million in funding for 6 projects through the National Trade Corridors Fund. These projects may be located across Canada and be with different kinds of organizations, groups, businesses, communities, but they all have one thing in common. They are working to improve fluidity at key points in Canada's vast network of supply chains. I'm also pleased that I have the opportunity to make these announcements here in Niagara, alongside our U.S. partners. Niagara, Western New York, is considered to be a strategic binational trade corridor due to our diverse supply networks, transportation infrastructure, experienced workforce, and proximity to market. In this area, we are within a one-day's drive of over 44% of North America's annual income. And with that said, that economy can take full advantage of the multimodal network that we have here in Niagara, whether it be road, rail, air, or water. While in Washington a few weeks ago, we had productive meetings with members of Congress, discussing many issues, including the integration of supply chains and streamlining logistics within strategically located trade corridors. We will continue to work together, 2 nations, with our public, our private sector binational partners, to prioritize proximity-based regional hubs and ensure we align our capital transportation investments to support the capacity needed within binational multimodal corridors to support and strengthen fluidity, which is why we are here today. It is my pleasure to announce $5 million in funding for the Peace Bridge to install non-intrusive inspection technologies for commercial vehicles that will improve the system for managing the flow of commercial vehicles and reducing wait times, creating the fluidity our partners expect when crossing this border. Our trade relationship with the USA is vital to strengthening our international trade performance and the prosperity of our middle class. This project, once again, will expand fluidity by reducing wait times for trucks entering the U.S. from Canada, including Niagara's multimodal network that, once again, is within a one-day's drive of over 44% of North America's annual income. Additional investments include $4.2 million to help the St. John's Port Authority redevelop a wharf to provide additional dock space for fishing vessels. $2 million to help technology company Blue Note Inc. work to incorporate software that will provide accurate data to ports and improve collaboration within supply chain networks. $675,000 to support a study of the Murray Bridge in British Columbia to look at all options for improving the reliability of this important corridor. $75,000 to enable a study to explore options for enhancing North Bay's trade corridor capacity. And finally, $74,500 to support a project to access the repair of the Port of Toronto's dock walls for the port's long-term usability. Through investments like these, we're working together with our partners binationally to help address congestion along our trade corridors all across the country. By making our supply chains more efficient and resilient, we're aiming to make life easier and more affordable for Canadians while supporting Canada's economy now and well into the future. I want to take this opportunity on behalf of all my colleagues, including the Minister, but those from all parts of this country, representing all 338 ridings throughout Canada and within Parliament. To all of you, I want to thank you, and I want to offer to each and every one of you a very, very happy holiday season. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and Happy Kwanzaa. Merci.
Thank you, Vance, for that great news. Now I'd like to invite Tim Clutterbuck, the Chair of the Buffalo and Fort Erie Public Bridge Authority, to the podium.
The Parliamentary Secretary has asked me to lead you all in O Canada, which I fully intend not to do. Thank you all for coming. I'd like to acknowledge the Parliamentary Secretary for your great work in the region. Appreciate it. I'd like to acknowledge Mr. Balinali, the MP for the area. Thank you for your support. It's been wonderful. Rachel Homewood is with us from Consul General's office. Welcome, Rachel. And we have Jeff Wood with the Canadian Trucking Alliance with us. Thank you for joining us today. Also with me from the board is Lou Holloway, one of our board members, Canadian side. We have 10 board members, and many of them have very, very important roles on both sides of this border, so they couldn't be here today. So thank you, Vance, for coming to the Peace Bridge and sharing with us the Canadian federal government's commitment to facilitating trade and commerce between our two great nations. Trade with the United States is a lifeblood of the Canadian economy, and this pre-arrival readiness evaluation project at the Peace Bridge is designed to make it easier and quicker for trucks entering the United States without sacrificing safety and security. Let me explain briefly how it works. For almost 2 decades, shippers and truckers exporting goods to the United States have been required to electronically transmit data from Canada, U.S. Customs and Border Protection an hour in advance of arriving at the border. When the trucks arrive at the border, they must stop, however, and deal with a customs agent, have documents reviewed, have questions asked, and some are referred to secondary inspection. Some are then scanned. Pre-arrival readiness evaluation is an innovative technology solution to expedite Canadian exports to the United States, and recognizing that the upcoming implementation of Securing America's Ports Act could result in significantly longer commercial processing times as a result of every truck requiring scanning prior to entering the United States. Given our very constrained plaza, as Ron has described from a geography perspective, it would be very difficult, if not impossible, to accomplish this task without some tremendous innovative technology. The Peace Bridge PARE solution is simple. Scan each truck and collect all pertinent shipment and driver information in Canada while the truck's in motion. Submit this information electronically to CBP so that they can do the adjudication of that data before the truck actually arrives at the booth on the other side of the border. In essence, we'll be using the time and space afforded by the Peace Bridge itself to do the work which is currently being done when the truck is stopped and waiting at the plaza. The result will be a truck receiving a go or no-go message at CBP primary inspection. As you know, the vast majority of trucks will receive a go message and would not be required to stop for more than a few seconds, significantly improving upon the current system that requires every truck to stop for an extended period of time to interact with the officer. Trucks that receive a no-go message will be referred to CBP secondary inspection and be subject to any enforcement action that is done currently. There will be no CBP professional working on the Canadian side. The benefits of PARE are obvious: reduced congestion, reduced wait times, better air quality by reducing emissions from less idling trucks, a more efficient Peace Bridge for vehicles crossing in that the cars will not be queued behind trucks, or certainly the border will move quicker, which is much better. Of course, this project could not be possible without the cooperation and partnership with the CBP, which we much appreciate, Government of Canada, which we appreciate as well. The Peace Bridge, with the financial assistance afforded the Government of Canada through the National Trade Corridors Fund, will be constructing all civil works and infrastructure to support the technology which will be supplied by CPP. Construction will commence in the spring of 2024 and be completed by the fall of 2024. When complete, the Peace Bridge will be the most efficient and technologically advanced crossing between Canada and the United States, which we're extremely, extremely proud of. Many thanks to Supervisor Program Funding, Mr. Fuda, who's with us today. Your entire CBP team has been tremendously instrumental in us coming to the understanding of what's required on your side of the border, and we much appreciate that. Parliamentary Secretary Badawey, for your support in this region, and certainly for the gateway initiatives that exist, and very happy to see you in your portfolio. Much appreciated by the Minister of Transport. And the entire Peace Bridge team for making it all possible. Thank you all. Thank you very much. Have a great holiday, and certainly we'll see you as we fly across the bridge in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. As Chair Clutterbuck mentioned, this project would not be possible without CBP. It's really kind of unique when you look at our relationship with CBP. Because we've had to be so innovative, we've done a number of projects with CBP on the Canadian side, and the relationship between CBP and CBSA at this location is really second to none. So with that, I'd like to welcome Giorgio Fudo from Field Operations at the Buffalo Field Office of U.S. Customs and Border Protection to say a few words.
So I think Ron just touched on it. This is just to express that our partnership, we value our partnerships with our Canadian partners and the Peace Bridge Authority. It's really something we value, and we just want to say thank you. I prepared a couple remarks. I also prepared a statement for y'all afterwards for media, and also it'll have my card in there too for contact. So I'll start off. On behalf of Buffalo Field Office, I would like to thank Ron Reines and his staff for their continued support and innovative forward thinking, which leads to the success of projects like this. Ron and the Peace Bridge Authority are courageous and willing to move forward into the future in achieving progress and advancement rather than standing idle in the past in hopes of keeping the status quo. We would like to thank our Canadian partners, CBSA and Transport Canada, as well for their continued support, especially with the Pre-Arrival Readiness Evaluation Project, PARE. This project has taken several years of hard work and coordination by all involved. We're excited to take the next steps in implementing this technology, which will move us toward a more streamlined process in the cargo environment while enhancing our border security mission. Beyond the efforts that were needed was the shared vision of a common goal. It has been said that vision is a picture of the future that produces passion. I could say that the people in this room and involved with this project are indeed extremely passionate in improving and striving for something greater. Once again, I want to emphasize how grateful we are for these partnerships, and we look forward to continuing to work together on the next steps with PARE. Thank you.
Thank you, Giorgio. I'd now like to turn it over to Christopher Brodkin, Regional Manager of Coordination and Policy at Transport Canada, Ontario Region, and he will moderate the question and answer session.
Thank you. So we're about to start the media Q&A. I'd ask that the media representatives identify themselves and the media they represent. It will be one question and one follow-up per media. On va commencer la période de questions. Je demande aux représentants des médias de s'identifier, ainsi que les médias qu'ils représentent. Ce sera une question et une question de suivi per media. Do we have a first question for today's announcement?
Hello, it's Ray Spiteri with the Niagara Falls Review. I don't know if Ron or Vance can answer this, but we all know when you say supply chains what you mean, but for the average reader and the average listener and viewer, can you give us an idea of what sort of goods and services are moving back and forth at this bridge here, and how important it is for this investment to happen?
Well, I'll talk from the broader sense, and I'll allow Ron to get more specific in terms of the product that's coming through and the trade that's coming through the bridge. But it's ironic that you actually asked that question, because when I was up and talking to members of Congress, and primarily talking with members at Zynga and Dingle and Capter and Higgins and others throughout the Great Lakes region, the question is always often asked by their staff: what exactly does a supply chain mean? Supply chains basically are a connection of regional hubs. I mentioned it in my comments, whereby we have regional hubs on both sides of the border, regardless of what they may be manufacturing, producing, and connecting those regional hubs together binationally is critical. Recognizing, but also connecting, integrating their data, their digital. But a lot of it has to do with the infrastructure that we have in place, such as the transportation infrastructure, and why it's so much of an advantage here in Niagara, because we have very strong transportation infrastructure. We're a transportation hub with the Welland Canal, with our rail, both short and main line, our air, and our road networks, all combined to really move those goods seamlessly binationally. The critical part is making sure that we have that fluidity over the borders, whether it be land, air, rail, or road, and of course water, to have that fluidity. And again, today's announcement allows that to happen more so here at the Peace Bridge, and hopefully that technology will carry on throughout other borders within Canada and the United States. Ron, do you want to talk about some of the product?
Sure. So at the Peace Bridge, we're somewhat different than some of the other crossings. For example, the Ambassador Bridge and the Blue Water Bridge are very heavily weighted toward the automotive sector. That is not the case at the Peace Bridge. The Peace Bridge has a very diverse product mix that crosses. There's some automotive, there's horticultural, there's agricultural, manufactured goods of all kinds, and that's why this project is so important. So the scanning of these vehicles, once CBP knows what's on the manifest, they look for anomalies. So from a security perspective, having this technology here at this border crossing, which has such a diverse mix of products crossing, is why it makes so much sense to actually be the first border crossing to have this technology implemented. First border crossing on the Canada-U.S. border. It's actually used on the southern border, but it's the first time on the northern border that it's being used.
Hi, I'm Laverne McGee, reporter with CHCH TV. My question is, this technology, when will it be implemented? And is there a time frame or an idea of when people will actually notice a difference in the crossing? And is there an idea? Is it going to speed things up by 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half hour? Any ideas on that?
So the engineering is already complete on the project. We'll be going to tender in January for the civil works of the project. That construction will start in the spring and be completed by the fall of 2024. So we will begin to see immediate results in the fall of 2024 once CBP turns on the equipment, if you will. In terms of time savings, Every truck at the primary inspection booth right now takes about 2.5 to 3 minutes to be processed. We believe that that will be reduced to probably 20 seconds to 30 seconds because all of the information will already be received by customs before the truck arrives at the primary booth. So the days of seeing trucks lined up trying to enter the U.S. at the Peace Bridge, lining up along the Queen Elizabeth Way, should be very, very infrequent, if it ever happens again. Now, obviously, that's subject to the technology working as advertised, but everything that we've seen when we've investigated it indicates that we will in fact achieve those milestones.
And follow up, is the $5 million the total amount, or will more funds be necessary to complete the project?
Well, the total project cost is probably closer to about $30 million, but the section that we are building and which the Government of Canada is funding is a total of about $10 million. The balance is actually being the equipment that's being installed, and that's at the cost of CBP.
If I can add to that as well, you spoke about the readiness of the program. And I think what has to add to that is not just the obvious, but also the not so obvious as it relates to the impact it's going to have on the economy. And not just here in Niagara, but all southwestern Ontario and into western New York. So the partnership that we're working on with members of Congress right now, and it goes back to Ray's question, is that integration of supply chains. But equally as important is the integration of the capital investments needed, especially within our transportation networks, binationally to be coordinated. So that therefore, when we're making capital investments as it relates to our supply chain, we have to be speaking with our binational partners, members of Congress, not only from Washington, but also here locally, to ensure that when road projects are happening, rail projects are happening, water throughout the Great Lakes as well as air, that we're coordinated so that it becomes more seamless. And this project is part of that. The second part of that is ensuring that we work with the private sector. So that those regional hubs that are right now locating in certain parts of both countries because of the production and, of course, the fluidity within their own supply chains, start being and investing in more strategic areas like Niagara and southwestern Ontario and western New York, due to the fact those capital investments being made, being integrated, and most of all, the efficiencies being borne by them because of the fluidity that we're creating through investments like this.
Are there any other questions? All right, thank you. Merci à tous.